This is a recorded message from the TARDIS computer banks.
You've entered the room of memories. I am the Doctor.
I'm the Doctor.
I'm the Doctor.
I'm the Doctor.
I'm the Doctor. I'm the Doctor. I'm the Doctor.
I'm the Doctor.
I have lived thousands and thousands of years and faced deadly adversaries. I've had 14 faces, past, present and future.
But 14 is not all.
There are more than I know. More doctors. More than I will ever be able to count. But the real question still stands.
Doctor Who.
I cross the void beyond the mind, the empty space that circles time. I see where others stumble blind, to seek a truth they never find. Eternal wisdom is my guide. I am the Doctor. Through cosmic waste the TARDIS flies, to taste the secret source of life. A present science can't deny exists, within, outside, behind, the latitude of human mind.
Exterminate!
The gentleman and the dandy both looked at each other with a hint of fear in their faces as the gunmetal grey pepper pots advanced towards them.
Scans show you are both the Doctor. You are both enemies of the Daleks.
The dandy and the gentleman raised their hands, knowing it would be near impossible to escape the grasp of this Dalek squadron. The retired brigadier reached into his pocket and pulled out a neat revolver. It was slightly rusty at the grip. He then proceeded to reach into his other pocket and place 6 bullets inside the magazine chamber inside the revolver. He cocked the gun and aimed, all the while looking at the younger brigadier as though to tell him to do the same with his firearm. The young brig caught on and made sure his military handgun was loaded with a magazine. Both slightly leaned forward and whispered silently to themselves, 3, 2, 1. Then both jolted forward, crying, "Doctors, get out of the way!" The dandy and the gentleman dived out of the way. The dandy rolled after diving, while the gentleman threw his body onto the flat. Dew covered the grass. The brigs opened fire upon the menacing pepper pots. However, each bullet ricocheted off the Dalekanian plating and the shell. The Dalek leading the advancement appeared full of rage. Its casing wobbled slightly as it cried,
Daleks conquer and destroy. Exterminate! Exterminate!
All 5 Daleks had the brigadiers in their eyesight. The Daleks aimed their whisk-like ray guns at both the brigadiers, and they cried,
Exterminate!
As the concentrated laser beams containing electricity and radiation blasted in the direction of them both. They dived out of the way, dodging the lethal beams. The fired shots instead destroyed part of a tall tree that, until now, towered over Unit HQ. The tree dropped like a fallen soldier. Chips of burning wood glided to the ground, while larger, thicker branches, engulfed in flames, crashed down near the 2 doctors. Men inside Unit HQ had sat lazily on their seats, legs up and crossed on the polished dining table in the staff room. Benton glanced out of the window for a second, and suddenly turned. He'd noticed the burning tree, both the dandy and the gentleman, as well as the 2 brigadiers, and the squadron of Daleks, pursuing the strange group. Benton shrieked, "Men, grab your weapons and get into position now!" The men, who were slightly annoyed at their interrupted period of relaxation, jolted up and grabbed hold of their rifles. They ran out of the room, barely having any military formation due to the nature of the situation, and firmly gripped their weapons. The 2 doctors hastily stood up and stood heroically. The soldiers stormed onto the field, loading their rifles. The Daleks turned their domes to face the unit troops. their pupils enlarging in their eye stalks. Benton stretched his arm forward and smugly smiled, having always wanted to be in the Brigadier's role. 5 rounds rapid on the Dalek, men! Each trooper fired their semi-automatic weapons. The bullets ricocheted off the Dalekanium armour. One of the Daleks aimed its gunstick towards the unit men and opened fire. It cried,
Exterminate! Exterminate! All inferior life forms will be exterminated!
As concentrated beams of energy shot towards the 2 soldiers, the men toppled over, firing their guns in the air as their insides became scrambled. Benton, horrified by his decision-making, called out to the rest of the men, Stop! Stop firing! Fall back! Fall back! And the group ran back to the building. The Daleks advanced forward, gliding smoothly on the grass, past the men they'd just murdered. The dandy stood up quickly and began to run over to the menacing beings. The gentleman snapped, What are you doing, fool? Do you want us killed? As he also stood up, wanting to catch up with him. The dandy cried out, Daleks! Over here! It's the Doctor speaking! The Daleks turned their tank-like shells around, their eye stalks fixated on the gentleman. The gentleman looked with curiosity as the dandy gestured to the unit HQ, to the man behind. The gentleman, noticing the gesture was for him, snuck back inside the building as the dandy stalled the Daleks with various irrelevant pieces of trivia. The gentleman had a rough idea of what the dandy wanted him to do and went to find Benton. The dandy asked the task force leader, Did you know gold is the most effective way to destroy Cyberman? The Dalek's pupils dilated. They had become slightly interested in what the Doctor had to say. The 2 brigadiers stood and trotted over to the trunk of the smoking tree. The gentleman eventually found Benton, sulking a little, while the rest of the men sat around a table. Benton, I think that's your name. Do you have access to any easily portable landmines here? The gentleman asked calmly. Yes, I think so, Doctor. What are you planning to do with them? Benton asked with a curious tone. Well, I think me and the dandy chap have a way to destroy those Daleks out there. The gentleman smiled, trying to make Benton feel hopeful. The dandy continued to spew out boring pieces of information that were totally irrelevant to the Daleks' plans. He carefully removed his sonic screwdriver from his coat pocket, avoiding the Daleks noticing. The Daleks only listened, as they were expecting the Doctor to accidentally reveal some sort of information that could benefit them in their conquest of the universe. However, the Daleks would have no such luck. The Doctor talked some more, as the gentleman, along with a platoon of 20 soldiers, began to sneak outside of the building to the Daleks' position. Each soldier held one landmine carefully as they walked along the grass. Half the soldiers placed down their landmines and ran off behind the mottled tree the brigadiers signalled them to. The dandy spoke out once more, twisting the middle of his sonic screwdriver and placing it behind his back. Did you also know that the spam, the Dalek task force leader, cut him off?
This irrelevant trivia means nothing to the cause of the Daleks. You will be exterminated.
The unit men were now safe behind the tree, and so the gentleman shrieked, Now! The dandy quickly brought out his sonic screwdriver from behind and quickly pulled it down. As the high-pitched wail of the device jutted out, the landmines detonated. The dandy quickly dived out of the way as the large explosions threw soil and parts of some Daleks, including the task force leader, into the air. The younger-looking brigadier spoke. Good heavens! How did that not destroy them all? The landmines weren't enough to take out the whole group of Daleks, but it did leave only 4 Daleks per unit to destroy. The 10 soldiers without mines in their hands pulled out their rifles and opened fire on the remaining Pertwees. The Daleks turned around, their voices amplifying their immense rage. Exterminate all resistance! All unit personnel are to be exterminated! They opened fire again, but the soldiers either dived out of the way or hid behind the trunk of the tree. The other 10 men with mines in their hands ran behind the view of the Daleks, as they now had their sights fixated on the gentleman and the 10 troops that were firing at them. As the troops scattered off around the field, the Doctor jolted up and brushed patches of dirt off his smoking jacket. He stood heroically and shouted towards his most menacing foes with a grin on his face. "Daleks!" The 4 pepperpots turned around, their armour badly damaged, covered in dirt. They stretched out their plungers and aimed their gunsticks at the Doctor. The Doctor, pretending to look startled, held out his sonic screwdriver. "One final thing, Daleks. I want to know how you got here. You arrived out of the blue, with no mention of a fleet. You clearly aren't reconnaissance, so I would like to know what you are up to." The Daleks stared at the Doctor for a few seconds, until one of them moved forward and began to speak.
We arrived here through the gateway. We were abducted from our own times and were forced here. Our mission is to exterminate you.
The Doctor, now looking startled for real, asked, "What gateway? And who forced you here?" The Brigadiers, as well as the gentleman and the rest of the platoon, looked on anxiously, as pretty much anything could have happened. The older Brigadier said, "I hope that chap doesn't get scrambled by those pepperpots. It would be rather embarrassing to die by being shot by the..." The younger Brigadier cut him off and reminded him, with a stern tone, that 2 of his men had been killed by those pepperpots, and their deaths certainly weren't embarrassing. The Dalek spoke out with a reluctant tone, as though telling the Doctor about the Emperor would compromise his plans.
We were forced here by our contractors.
The Doctor chuckled. "See? I know you're lying there. Since when have you had contractors? Tell me, who were you forced here by? Or do I detonate those landmines and you'll end up like your task force leader?" The Dalek spoke out again.
The Emperor?
"As in the Emperor
No! The Emperor of the universe, the Lord of time and space."
the Dalek blurted out, with a small hint of fear in its tone, showing it was somewhat fearful of the Emperor of the universe. The dandy Doctor spoke out again, satisfied with the answer the Dalek gave him. "Well, thank you for that piece of information. I suggest you beam yourselves back where you came from then." The Daleks were not going to simply just leave without fulfilling their goal. One of the Daleks moved forward, aimed its gunstick, and cried,
"Exterminate!"
The dandy then pulled down the handle on his sonic screwdriver, causing the second wave of landmines to detonate. Parts of the Dalek and the Earth blew up into the sky. All that remained were the shattered pieces of Dalek armor, as well as bits and pieces of the Dalek mutants inside. The Doctor spurted out a witty remark, "And exterminate to you too, old chap." As he placed his sonic screwdriver back into his jacket pocket, the unit men cheered, raising their fists in the air at the sight of the destroyed Daleks. The gentleman, along with the 2 Brigadiers, clapped. The 2 Doctors, the dandy and the gentleman, as well as the 2 Brigadiers, the stern and the relaxed, stood facing opposite one another. The dandy spoke out. "I hope we can cross paths another time, old chap, so long as there's no reality-shredding arrivals, that is." The 2 Doctors chuckled. They shook hands, as the 2 Brigadiers compared each other's facial hair. The dandy spoke out again. "I'm highly confident that you came here through the same way as those Daleks did. Just watch out in future for any sort of method interference." "Don't worry, I will do. It was good to see you, Doctor." The dandy replied, "You too, Doctor." The gentleman and the relaxed Brigadier began to chat quietly to each other as they headed off back to their TARDIS. The dandy said to the brigadier, "I think I better have a look for any sort of clue I can find to this so-called Emperor of the Universe in those Dalek shells," as they walked towards the ruined patches of Earth.
Reports have arrived of the mission to kill the Doctor's third incarnation. The Dalek squadron sent to Earth was destroyed. We believe the Doctor was accompanied by another third incarnation.
Now that the fake warning has been deployed, the Master should be on his way to pickpocket an incarnation of the other. Colony in Space, I named it. You'd like it. The virus has been deployed, and your failings are of no importance. Besides, my plan was always much bigger than killing the Doctor.
Then why sacrifice our army if not to kill the Doctor?
Because you have done your job. I sent your ship crashing through a barrier that connects that universe there to that one there.
What use is that to the Dalek race?
Oh, that's none of your concern. Thanks to you, the barrier I started breaking through on Arca 10 has now completely shattered.
This means nothing.
Oh, it means everything. As this, Daleks, is only just the beginning.
Voyage dissects the course of time. Who knows, you say? But are you right? Who searches deep to find the light that glows so darkly in the night? Toward that point, I guide my fleet. As fingers move to end mankind, metallic teeth begin their grind. With sword of truth, I turn to fight the satanic powers of the night. Is your faith before your mind? Know me. Am I the Doctor?